Hey everybody, welcome back. This is lesson 29, solving two-step equations like part 2. So these kinds of equations are going to be as well. They're going to include two steps, but they look slightly different and involve a little bit kind of different techniques than what we've used in the last lesson. So let's take a look at this first one. This first one, you may notice the fraction in the front. The fraction coefficient is going to be treated a little bit differently. We can do two different techniques to get rid of that 2/3 in order to isolate our b. So I'm going to do that one first for you. I'm going to start with the first step though. The first step is to get rid of the adding. So if you notice, this first problem involves adding and multiplying. So I'm going to get rid of that adding first. Once you do that, I will show you the next slide. I will also go through the second question with you, and the third question I'm just going to give you the answer, and I'm going to have you show the work. Okay, so to get rid of that adding, we subtracted 7 on both sides, allowing this to cross out, and I'm left with 2/3 b. Again, when we're doing two-step equations, and I know it's two steps as I look and see what kinds of operations there are, and because there are two operations, it's going to take me 2 steps to get it isolated. So again, we follow SADMEP, getting rid of any adding or subtracting first, then multiplying or dividing second. Here we go. So now I have 2/3. There's two different ways to do it, so that's why I wrote it twice. The first way is because this is multiplying, I can divide. It will look a little messy, but this is really just called a complex fraction. It's a fraction inside another fraction. It will still cross out. 2/3 divided by 2/3 is 1. And this answer will, whatever this will be, it will be -8 divided by 2/3, which will get you -12. So that's one way to do it. A second way to do it is to multiply by the reciprocal. We call this multiplicative inverses, if you recall the property. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply by the fraction but flipped upside down. So we call that the multiplicative inverse. So I could do the same thing. Notice, even though it's kind of like multiplying, we are dividing. Look, 3 divided by 3, those cross out, and the 2's divided by 2's, those cross out. So I'm still left with 1b, and I will still get the same answer, -12. So it's up to you how you want to do it. You can divide, which we did here, or you can use the inverse, or the multiplicative inverse. We call it multiplicative inverse, which is right here. So it's up to you, one or the other. And again, your final answer will be b equals -12. All right, moving on to the second question, I noticed right away that there's dividing and there's subtracting in this equation. The subtracting is pretty obvious. The dividing is shown by the division bar. Now, normally I would get rid of the subtraction first. However, I can't write +3 under here because literally my 6 is blocking me from doing that. So I actually have to get rid of the dividing first. Think about what you would do in terms of order of operations. If I told you what f was, you would first do -3 and then divide by 6, correct? So I have to work backwards from that. So the last thing I did was divide by 6. So that's what I'm going to have to undo first. I'm still going to use my inverses. Because this is dividing, I'm going to do the opposite of dividing, which is multiply. I'm going to multiply this whole thing by 6 and this whole side by 6. My 6's will cross out to be equal to 1, and what will be left on my left side is f -3. 25 times 6 on the right side is going to be equal to 150. And now the only operation holding me back is that subtraction sign, so I'm going to undo that by doing its opposite, which is adding. And my final answer is 153. Again, I always get into the habit of boxing or circling my answers. All right, pause the video if you need to copy, and then I'm just going to show you the answer to the last question. Hopefully you can figure out the correct work to show. And finally, the last problem for today is m divided by 4 minus 9 equals -5. Again, I notice there's dividing and subtracting in this problem. Fortunately, I can follow SADMEP and get rid of the adding or subtracting first, and then get rid of the multiplying or dividing second. Again, we always use inverse operations to undo an operation. And my final answer should be 16. Let's see if you can show the correct work to get your answer to equal 16. Looking forward to seeing you in class soon.